Good morning, everyone. My name is Rachael Lammey. I work in member and community outreach at Crossref. I thought I'd start by talking about what Crossref is and what it does. We're a not-for-profit membership organisation for scholarly publishers, and we provide services to help make scholarly content easy to find, cite, link and assess. We do that in a couple of ways. We work with our publisher members to do so, and with the wider scholarly community, funders, researchers, the authors and readers. And we like to play with new technology and run infrastructure that gives publishers a way to collaborate on initiatives that it doesn't make sense for each publisher to take on individually. We're about 16 years old, initially founded in 2000 with a small set of 12 publishers. We're a membership organisation for those publishers, and we're not for profit. We're based in Oxford in the UK and in just outside Boston in the US. And our main departments consist of outreach, technical development, so technical development, working to put together new products, product who run that process, and then operations who keep everything running behind the scenes. Although we're a membership organisation for publishers, we also work with libraries who use the metadata and the information that we have to be able to find and use content. We have publisher members who sponsor large amounts of smaller publishers to help them with technical and administrative aspects. And researchers as well. They use what Crossref does behind the scenes in order to find and use research content. Started in 2000 with 12 members, and now we work with over nearly 6,000 member publishers. Publishers deposit metadata with Crossref, so information on articles, books, conference proceedings, to help researchers find and use that content. So we've got that for metadata for over 85 million scholarly content items. What that enables are ways for researchers to persistently link to the content, to the articles, books, etc. that they're interested in. We have identifiers for funders so that there's a consistent way for funders, researchers, publishers and other interested parties to be able to track who's funded published research. We report and display corrections and retractions in a consistent way, and we provide software to be able to check papers for originality before they're published. I've talked about the metadata we collect. We also make that openly available via an API, an application programming interface, and we've used that to build search interfaces on top of. So if you're interested in an article, you can put it into our search interface and be able to definitively find where that article sits on the web. Why do publishers join? They do so to help their content get discovered, to show people where it's located, and very importantly, update that information if the content moves. Being a Crossref member and depositing article metadata with us helps drive traffic to publications, because lots of third parties use the information that Crossref has, so link resolvers in libraries, content databases, to be able to point authors, researchers to the content. And as I said, we provide other collaborative services, so things like similarity checking, funder identifiers that add to that metadata and make it more useful by more parties. I've talked a bit about metadata. Really the key part of the metadata that Crossref collects is the DOI, or the digital object identifier. It helps uniquely identify and link content to the article in a way that a simple URL doesn't. So a digital object identifier plus the location of the article or the piece of content on the web, plus that additional metadata, so the authors, the title, the publisher, the journal, maybe page numbers, who funded it, they all help a researcher know that this article is unique and distinct and won't be confused with other similar articles that have been published on the web. The DOI itself is tied to the online location of the article, and really this is why Crossref was created, because publishers were finding that whenever they started to publish a lot of content online, that links to websites would break, content would move, publishers would merge, unmerge, journals would move between publishers as well, and it became very difficult for someone to reliably be able to click on a URL in an article to follow the thread of their research through. So obviously it's frustrating if you're reading a news article online and you click on a link and you can't find you get a 404 error. That's frustrating. If you're working in research, that obviously becomes more important. Because if the links don't work, then that actually stops you following the thread of your research. So the way that it works is that publishers use Crossref DOIs to link to content, and that's usually from the reference lists at the end of articles. Whenever a reader clicks on one of those DOI-based links, they get referred via the information that we have in the Crossref database to the cited article at its correct location on the web. If that content moves, then the publisher will come to us, update the sort of central Crossref database, and then all of the other publishers, or anyone else really, who's linking to the content using the Crossref DOI, they would get redirected to the content in its new location. So it's a central place to make those changes so that the research is consistently and persistently linked together. As I mentioned, our thousands of publisher members are registering their content with us. I'd mentioned things like journals, books, and conference proceedings, but actually it's much wider than that. Although journal articles do make up the bulk of the metadata, or the 85 million content items that we work with. Books are starting to grow very quickly as more publishers are assigning identifiers to their books and to book chapters so that they can be cited. Things like standards, technical reports, and even things that sort of sit within maybe like the grey literature, like working papers, can all be assigned identifiers. Also, with the push for collecting and publishing data by publishers, again, if you assign a persistent identifier like a DOI to a data set, it means that it can be cited persistently within the literature, so that someone coming back in 5 years' time will still be able to find the data, that the underlying data that the article was built on. We've also recently started to accept the assignment of digital object identifiers for preprints. So again, having ways to uniquely identify a preprint, but then within the metadata, the publisher of the preprint can link the preprint to the published article if one exists. I think that's really important because, yes, it's useful for articles to be linked, you going to a website and being able to find a link to the published article, but actually having that information in the metadata as well makes it computer readable, so that machines can go and identify those links and build a build a picture of the scholarly infrastructure based on that. Looking at the metadata that we collect, the minimum that publishers need to give us is information on the title of the paper, the authors, the ISSNs, so enough to distinctly identify that article as from other articles on a similar subject that have been published. That information can now be supplemented with things like funding information. As I mentioned, it's really useful to be able to identify who has funded the research and be able to do that in a consistent way, because sometimes that information would be buried in footnotes, acknowledgement sections, separate funding sections. Having it in the metadata in a consistent way means that computers and machines can take that information and make use of it as well, which a lot of funders are doing, because they can come and use the Crossref information to be able to see which publications they've funded across potentially 5,000 different publishers. We also collect information on the license that a paper has been published under. A lot of our publisher members are small open access publishers, and they can provide license information in the metadata so that someone coming to Crossref to use the information would be able to see if a paper has been published under, say, a Creative Commons license, a publisher proprietary license. So it's a quick and easy way for them to find out what they can actually do with the paper or the data that they're accessing. We also collect full text links. So normally whenever you click on a DOI, it will take you to the abstract page. So the page where you can access the full text, but also see additional information on the paper. So the abstract, authors, title, etc. Providing full text links in the Crossref metadata also gives a means for researchers to be able to pull back the full text, to use it for example, text mining, which is a growing field in the industry. So finding the full text with the license information shows a text miner where the content's located and via the license what they can actually do with it. We can represent significant updates to content, so things that a researcher reading a paper would need to know about, such as that would merit something like a correction, a retraction, or another update. That can be collected in the metadata. And then ORCID IDs, which are identifiers for the author themselves. We can collect these within the Crossref metadata, and then we can link up definitively who the author of the paper is, what the paper is and where it's located, and who funded the paper as well, which is a very useful set of information to have. There's no point us collecting all of that information without making it available for the widest reuse possible, because that helps people discover content. We make the metadata freely available so that anyone can access and use it. We have search services on our Crossref site, so that a researcher can go in, put in a set of references and find the DOIs related to those references, or just come and look up articles that they're interested in. And then other organisations like ORCID also use that information to be able to link authors to publications. We also allow organisations to participate in what we call enhanced Crossref metadata services. So it's unlikely that an organisation, so someone like ProQuest or a large sort of discovery database, would just come to Crossref and use our metadata. They might use information from other sources, like things like PubMed, for example, but it all works together to be able to provide the most comprehensive picture of what's been published and what's out there. Organisations can use the reference information that publishers give us in the metadata to try to provide citation metrics. Who's citing this paper? Because we have 5,500 member publishers, it means that we're potentially covering citations that the other services don't. Document delivery providers, so showing where the content's located so that it can be pulled back and provided to people who need it. Discovery services, search engines and content aggregators. And really that's only a small subset of the kind of organisations that are using the Crossref metadata. Because we make it freely available via an API too, people don't have to sign up in order to use the API. So we're finding lots of interesting examples of people trying to use the information to build open access databases of content, for example. So there are more uses out there for this information than perhaps we've even thought of as well. Or people using it to do research, to look at publication trends in different countries. So we made the API available in 2012 and the uses of it are growing exponentially every year. So I think if you're interested in the information that Crossref has, feel free to go to our website at crossref.org or just get in touch with me as well, and we'd be happy to share more information. Thank you.